very independent, I would say. I was always trying new things. And after my studies, I did a few internships in finance because that was a natural path from, studying economics. Most people go into investment banking, which I did. But parallel to that, I was already dabbling my way into media. So in Switzerland and Italy, I was working as I would say personality. So that means, you name it, photo shoots and presenting on stage, being on television, all sorts of things. And so I had this parallel life, which was my uni life and also my media life. And from uni I went into investment banking, and I loved it in a way because it did, first of all, it was prestigious, it was here in London, it was a very famous American investment bank, and you're thrown into a corporate world and you learn a lot of things that you might not have an idea about. But I was talking to my colleagues because of curiosity, and on people on the desk and on the floor, the trading floor, and I was asking, but guys, like, you've been here for 10 years, and what are the guys next to you doing? And they didn't know, they didn't care. So for them, it was just like doing their job and going home. And it wasn't my style, it wasn't my type of field, so I always wanted more. And I also am very, I would say, rebellious, so not very structured in a way. So for me, having structured times is not my thing. There's people who actually thrive in it, but for me, it wasn't my thing. I would struggle because I would have to get to work at 6 a.m., wake up at 5, go around the park, and for me, that's not a thing. And so I realized that very early on, it's not for me. I also wrote in my book that I burned out because I already had this media career parallel to my banking career. So I was trying so many things because I wanted to. I was very ambitious, and also it was a great opportunity. You're not gonna say no to a very famous investment bank. But at the same time, I had this other media career in Switzerland and Italy, so I would travel on the weekends from London to either Zurich or Milan to work. So I would work 7 days a week effectively, and after a few months, I ended up in a hospital. Nobody knew what I had, and they were like, "You have malaria." I'm like, "What do you mean malaria?" I was in London, and I was just so burned out that I got some sort of virus nobody knew, and then and there I realized that, that lifestyle wasn't for me, the corporate lifestyle, and that I needed to figure something out. And from that crisis, I realized that both the corporate world and the media, the traditional media world, wasn't for me really, because it was top down and it was country by country, and I wanted something global. And that's I kind of took a break, just eating on my mom's couch for a while, doing nothing, being depressed. And then I realized that I needed to start something that was fully mine, and that's how I started my first business. That was a digital magazine with contributors, and we're talking about luxury, travel, and started getting the first sponsorships. It was completely different at the time, the internet world. So that's how it happened.
Wow, that's really interesting. And also,
Could you give us more details on how you started that initial business and how you went about flexing?
Yeah, so there was a girl that was an acquaintance of mine who was a pioneer in blogging at the time. And I studied her model, or what she did, and I contacted her. I said, "Can you put me in touch with the people who give you the structure and it's called in Italian tabellare, which was the banners basically." And at the time, the traffic used to make quite decent revenue. Then I realized I couldn't be alone in this, so I attracted contributors. So what I did is people who wanted exposure from my previous media career, so women, it was mainly women who wanted to be known in the journalistic world, but they wanted exposure. So I attracted them. I said, girls, you can write, I'm going to give you this platform, I'm going to advertise for you, I'm going to speak about you, and you can create content for me. So it was kind of a group of women who would write, it was basically a barter deal. They would get exposure, and I would get people writing, great writers. So that's how it started, and for the advertising was because of this model that I studied of this girl who was already doing it.
I see. So you mentioned before you were sort of on the couch and you didn't really have, like, you kind of wondered what do I do next? Then suddenly this idea popped up. So how did you identify this gap in the market and identify the need for you to start something like this?
Right. I don't know exactly because obviously the market now changes even faster than it used to. Now you have to reinvent yourself every few months, I would say. You need to keep studying. What was my advantage was that I tried a lot of things, maybe a bit too many, and I put a lot of effort in for my whole adolescence, I would say. I was trying, it was fun for me, and I was working in many fields, and then I took a break without like thinking about anything. And I think that's great for your brain, creatively, when you really like have all of that knowledge, but then you take a break, your brain can help you kind of like come up with an idea. But it was trial and error. It's always trial and error. That's my advice, because not everything you try will work out, but it will help you for your next thing. It's basically, you kind of like, you get like this investment in you. And even if it's, let's say, a failure, it's really like you create capital in yourself.
I see. Yeah.
Sorry, these projects that you were doing, were they costly projects, or were you losing money, or was it just sort of passion projects that you were doing on the side, and some of them worked out, some of them maybe didn't work out?
Well, so I like cash flow, so I didn't invest. I mean, you have to always invest a little bit of money if you want to create like a magazine. You have to have a domain, you have to have a photographer, you have to have, you know, maybe trip expenses, but I wouldn't like burn out too much cash. I liked at the time projects that could make me break even within a few months straight away. That is because I had to rely on myself. I didn't have any money to fall back onto. So I financed it all myself. I didn't have investors, I didn't have family money or anything like that. So for me it has worked out. Bootstrapping, always, but it depends on the project. Are you creating a project that you later on want to sell, or are you creating a project that, you know, makes a lot of cash flow? It depends on you. It's a personality thing as well.
So just moving back to your entire journey again. Now, you mentioned that you were studying economics alongside content creation. So what made you start on?
It wasn't content creation because it didn't exist. It was media.
Sorry, yeah. What made you go into the field of media in the first place?
Good question. I was 12 years old, and I was in a mall, and I saw all of these advertisements, and I was like, I want to be on it. And then I took my parents to a model agency at the beginning, and like, you know, we started like small advertising, like photo shoots and like local. As a kid, participation of, you know, billboards and banners, things like that, but I didn't like it. When I was 16, I quit. I started at 12, I quit at 16 because I felt objectified. I was like, no, they want to know like my measurements and like who are they to decide what my measurements are, what color hair I have. I don't feel like it. And I started working as a hostess and a waitress, like part-time, and at 18 years old, as soon as I could. Finance my studies, and then I realized that the lady who was the owner of this agency for hosts wasn't very nice to me, basically. She would put me in the worst jobs possible. She would always put me into, you know, like jobs where like there's like this kind of objectifying women, you know, like you have to be pretty and that's it, and I didn't like that. I felt like she would give me the worst jobs. And one day there was an advertisement of Miss Switzerland, which was at the time, now it's not the same thing, but at the time Miss Switzerland was like the influencers of today. It was like the thing in the whole country. And my best friend at the time said, please let's go, please let's go, please let's go. The casting, let's do the casting. But it's like thousands of girls. And she really helped me because she pushed me to go. And we ended up in the selections, and then I ended up in the 16 girls, I think, I don't remember. Basically, I got lucky. Long story short, I ended up on TV, and I was like, wow, this is so useful. This way, the lady from the agency is going to start respecting me because she's going to see me on TV. Little did I know that that thing branded me so much that from there on, I kind of like became a brand name. I didn't win. I was first runner-up, so second, which was great for me because I didn't want to leave my studies for a year. And I was super happy. It was like the best possible result because this way I kind of like had the exposure but not the contract. And then I started working really, really hard, like as myself, not as a model. So that basically I got lucky because I got all of that experience previously, in working in advertising, and then I managed to kind of like use it on TV, and then use it to become my brand, and then self-manage myself. So that was very good yeah.
So, given that start that you had because of the whole Miss Switzerland competition, how did you then use that and capitalize and then build the brand that you have today? And then how did you also keep up with the rapidly changing atmosphere of trends throughout the years? So how have you been able to grow your brand in spite of all the hurdles of the modern age?
I love branding. I think everything is a brand. You're a brand. You're a brand. This uni is a brand. No matter what, a doctor is a brand. Anybody, everything is a brand. Even a train, anything. So I have my own branding consultancy, and trial and error, I learned also thanks to Italy, working with a lot of Italian brands. I'm Swiss Italian, so Italy and branding is like bread and butter. Like literally, like we grow up like looking at what socks you're wearing and like how you walk. For us, everything is brand. We're obsessed with aesthetics, and so that helped me a lot because when I moved to London, this wasn't as strong here, and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. So I realized I really can apply it to businesses, I can apply it to anything I do, and how I grew my brand. Well, depends on the industry you want to go in, right?
On the what side?
The industry you want to go in.
What's been the most successful one?
How? I don't know. It's a good question. Right now, I work a lot with longevity and clinics, but high fashion, luxury, and beauty.
Interesting you mentioned longevity because I'm sure you know I'm pretty heavily involved in that. Oh, yes.
I don't want to interrupt you, sorry. So focus on what you were saying, the branding. How would you recommend finding the right people you want to collaborate with if you are you want to enter an industry that you have no exposure about? For example, you mentioned fashion and luxury. So if I want to find a new fashion contest, for example, how would I go about doing that?
It's get somebody who can scrape a LinkedIn for the right contacts. I think this is the best trick. You can also get AI to do that, and basically per industry, you get the right contact, whether it's marketing or PR, depending what your need is.
It's like two mini questions. Firstly, what do you think you personally did while you were developing your brand that made you like unique so that you became like successful? And do you think genuineness as branding is relevant?
Now more than ever, with TikTok, the more genuine you are, the times have changed. It's not as perfect as it used to be. At the time when I was developing Instagram specifically, it was all about aesthetics and also brand values. What's your unique proposition? For me, it was definitely aesthetics, luxury, but also the fact that I'm international. I speak a lot of languages, I travel a lot, and also that for me, I always stood and I stand for individual empowerment. That was my core value. It is still, and I live and breathe it. So these are my values, and I express it in a different way in different platforms.
I was just wondering, what would you recommend to do differently or different things to focus on for personal branding versus maybe more like corporate or kind of branding for a bigger company?
Do you have a company or are you talking about yourself?
So I'm working like with a professor who's trying to like start a personal brand. So just wondering maybe how that would be different to like, I don't know, I feel like the agency we're working for is kind of more focused on maybe more corporate branding and it's been a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I work with individuals too,
Yeah.
so it depends what field the professor is in. I cannot
Yeah.
recommend it. Maybe email me.
Okay, that'd be great, because thought leadership.
But normally, individual branding has to go into a field, and
Yeah.
then it has to be cohesive. I disagree that, you know, online you have to only speak about one subject. It's not true at all.
Yeah.
As long as it's cohesive with the persona that you're putting out, you can have like 5 fields that you're covering. As long as you keep, you know, like showing them.
Thank you so much. I'm actually from the LSE and I just came from a lecture called Brand Strategy. And I just thought it's so interesting because I feel like branding right now, it's a totally different field than marketing. Because marketing is really about advertising, but branding is what is your identity, what is the promise that you're giving, and how do you say it and also keep doing it. And so I was wondering if you have any advice in terms of like, because branding, it's like everybody can start an Instagram account or any sort of social media account. How do you see the power of consistency, and also what's your personal story when you're like expanding and scaling up your social media?
Good question. It's a mix in between spontaneity, so you need to continuously put out content that means it's spontaneous. And I myself sometimes forget that I also have to put out some branding, that means some PR as well. So for example, just now I posted an editorial with a big brand and a big magazine, and I tend not to do it because I know that the times are more like, you know, connecting to your audience is more important, but then I realize that at some point you'll lose that brand. So it's a balancing act in between basically acts that validate your brand and a natural connection to your audience, I would say, online.
So how do you combine personal branding and business, and also because you show your lifestyle a lot? And me as well, I do content creation, I'm a journalist, but sometimes as a woman, or well, I'm insecure that the people who want to employ me as a journalist see my social media that is more lifestyle, personal branding. So how do you combine it?
Oh, you definitely, as a journalist, should have one account for, you know, your public-facing persona and then your private account. I always separate those. For example, I really love to dance, and I really love to dance basically on the streets, Latin dancing. And I do that, and sometimes I show glimpses of it, of my, you know, this passion I have on my main social accounts. However, I cannot go that direction too much because I will dilute my brand. So I do have a personal account, which I only dance.
And with the kind of development of AI, do you see it as like opportunity or a threat to like the fact that for the people who are developing the brand or for content creators, and like what are the strengths and weaknesses of this kind of emergence of AI?
So AI will change it all. It's changing it all now. It's better to use it as an ally right now because it's going to change the world. In terms of social media and content creation, 100%. For example, practically, you can now do a voiceover of any video with your voice. You just pre-record a small paragraph of your voice, and AI will then speak for you. So use your voice, and then you can write whatever you want, and it's gonna just do a voiceover in your voice. It's just an example. It's gonna happen the same with your likeness, with your face, with everything. There's gonna be a huge problem, you know, with privacy and with, copyright and all of that. I think the fact that AI can work 24/7 and can produce content and you keep posting for you 24/7, there's no way that a human being will be able to compete. So that we're gonna probably have, this is just my assumption, AI clones of ourselves online. They're gonna speak for us. And we're gonna tweet them and we're gonna use them however we need. So it's better to get ahead of the curve and just do it now before everyone else hopes in it. And then I think the first mover will have an advantage. Other than that, I think in-person events will become more of a luxury and more of a value because that's the only thing we as humans can offer.
Hi, so I wanted to ask, you mentioned that your first business where you created the magazine, you used your brand from which you developed for media to like kind of start it. So in that project and all of your projects, when you were creating a business, were you trying to create it as a separate brand that can work without you, or were you like mainly like obviously exploring, you know, pushing your brand with it, but were you trying to create it like a separate entity?
I love to create separate entities. Certain things I do nobody even knows because I don't want to like basically cross over. Sometimes you build one business on top of another. You pivot a little bit. Like for example, from my magazine, I then started my own, content creation journey because people kept seeing parts of me on the magazine and then asking about my outfits. So it was just one thing and then it transformed into a completely different business. But most of the things I've ever done, they're kind of separate, and I like them to be separate, but then the experiences can obviously be translated.
How would you then recommend, like say if you have your brand in media, like you as a person, and then you're trying to create like a separate company, which you want to run separately, but obviously it'll be easier to like launch it with your personal brand. How do you like separate it? Like what is the process?
For example, I have a branding consultancy. And I have clients that know about my content creation career, obviously, but they don't ask me to post about it or like use it. I just show them. They know that if I was able to create this as myself as a brand, I can replicate it for them one way or another. So that's the only thing that they see. Did I understand the question properly? Because how do I do it? I just started and then go that way.
Okay, and then for your consulting, how do you then like do
Word of
marketing
mouth. Word of
and
mouth.
find clients?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
Okay.
I go to conferences, rarely to the right ones. And then that's where usually I got the first clients. And then from there on, it's mainly word of mouth.
So word of mouth, I understand. But do you not do anything else because you feel that the company is like at the size where it's manageable for you and you don't want to scale it?
Correct. At the moment, I don't want to scale it. At the moment, because it's doing well. I'm creating a team right now. I have a team, but I'm expanding it. I'm training the team. It's a lot of work to train them because they have to absolutely have exactly, my way of doing things. It takes some time because it's, human power and also I believe in AI a lot. So I think the more AI develops, the easier it will be to scale it. So at the moment, I'm not pushing it at all. The clients, if ever we can say no to clients.
Okay, and then like one last question. So you mentioned like AI obviously can help. So what tools do you use to automate everything?
No, personally, you can create your own AI agents. You can just use ChatGPT itself. I love ChatGPT, but you can train AI to have modules in a way so that for example, scrape LinkedIn from contacts. You can train AI to call people. Call email people. So many things you can do. Depends on you.
Thank you.
So now just moving back to the kind of industries that you're working on right now. So you mentioned longevity, high fashion, amongst tech, and then amongst others. So basically, these are like big adverts in sort of our current era that are about to take off. So how do you go about identifying them? And then how are you, again, adapting to these adverts and then letting your brand move with them?
So naturally, high fashion was a very good place to be, I would say, for content creation, I would say like 5 years ago. High fashion, jewelry, I also do watches, I do all sorts, beauty, makeup. Right now, you just, know that there's a downturn in the industry. First of all, you can feel it from the budgets that each company gets because companies have depends on the size of the company, but they have marketing budgets, they have PR budgets. And like every quarter, every year what they get. So that's one way, but you can also just study the market and see which one is growing and which one is in a downturn. Because of China right now, high fashion and luxury is in a downturn. It's like a very difficult situation. So at the moment they're struggling, everybody's struggling. Plus, naturally, the content creation market has developed and more people have entered. More people are ready to do basically a lot for just reputation or exposure. And once you have a developed business, you're not going to go and do the same thing they're doing just for exposure. So basically you're competing against a big pool of people who are ready to work for free. That's not a good position to be in. You want to be in a growing market, not in a market that is oversaturated. So it's a natural cycle of any market. You have to always make sure that you enter when the market is in the right stage.
And how do you identify that?
You study.
Oh, fair enough.
Do you think that the content creation market is saturated right now? Would you recommend that people start, would you maybe from that advice, taking that thread, would you not recommend that people start building a personal brand on certain platforms, for example?
I absolutely recommend you build your personal brand no matter what. Otherwise, the internet will do it for you. You want to control your information no matter what. That's the first thing. Now, if you want to scale it or not, that's a different question. Depends on what you need. Depends on what your goal is. But you still need to take control of your brand. You don't want, Google to write something weird about you because there's a mistake there somewhere.
Hi, Xenia.
Hi.
Thank you for coming here to talk to us today. I had two little questions for you, if that's okay, that kind of tie into each other. First of all, there are a lot of content creators nowadays. I want to ask, in your words, what do you think makes you special and why I should follow you instead of them? And then my second question is that you mentioned a cash flow. I presume you earn a decent amount of money doing what you do. And in most jobs, we sell something to people. So I'm wondering what you think you sell to people when we visit your page, when you get money from us watching the ads that you make. What are you giving to us?
All right, so normally, I'll be honest with you, how brands select people, it depends on the industry. So in the fashion industry, it's something that I don't really appreciate that much. It's about community, like personal relationships. It's something I don't like to do because I find it almost a bit like cheating. You know somebody, you hang out with them, you go for coffee, and then they give you a job. It's not what I want. Also, it's not my thing. I'm an introvert. I don't look like one, but I'm an extreme introvert. So I like for my content to speak for itself. So it's about the energy, basically, because I believe that content is an energy exchange. Just like me sitting here and you guys, we're exchanging energy, it's the same thing with a picture or a video. There is a certain energy. That's one thing. Another thing is professionality, is quality, and it's who is my audience. Will they buy? It depends on the product. It depends a lot, on the industry, on the product. I have a lot of, women who would probably, be interested in a certain product they advertise. But if I advertise, I don't know. I'm just saying, a bodybuilding powder probably wouldn't work, So that's obvious. But it's a mix of what I stand for, how my settings are, what my energy is, and also basically if my brand aligns with yours. That's also very important because it's very important to say it's not about sales. Oftentimes in the luxury segment, whether it is longevity or beauty or fashion, beauty maybe it's affordable, but everything else it's usually not about direct sales. It's about building a brand. So when the brand sees a product with me or with some competitor of mine in the same sphere, they don't really look for direct sales. They're not going to be able to sell a bag from a post because that bag maybe is $5,000. Usually they want to have the eyeballs and have people see that bag once, twice, 3 times, 20 times, and then go to the store and buy it.
Thank you for the second question. So moving on from what you said about the eyeballs and taking things in the right direction, as a B2B, would you recommend ads to get more interest in general, in the general public, and then hopefully hope that that interest would translate to those specific companies that I want to work with? seem like company or
It's a very tricky question. Depends how much you're spending on ads, how many clients you already have, B2B. It's good to have a little bit of a reputation, but it doesn't have to be like a huge, advertising campaign. It is good to have a little bit of a positioning because, when then a B2B client lands or an employee of that company lands on you, they're like, oh, that's cool. Okay, good night.
Okay, so finally put the lights back on. Yeah, okay. This is the.
That's good.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so now kind of moving on back to sort of the main tech companies that you collaborated with. So could you talk us through how that happened? Google, Samsung.
Well, depends. Sometimes they contact you directly, most of the time, because they see something of you online. Otherwise, there are agencies that take care of that. So agents or personal managers. I usually don't go out in the market trying to get contacts simply because, I'm at a position I don't have to. However, you could create your own team, or you could have one person team, like an assistant, as again, making lists of marketing managers and starting those relationships. And then if you're starting, you can start these conversations and they'll keep you in mind. They keep in mind, even smaller content creators or micro-influencers, so-called, they can do really, really well if their audience is extremely targeted and it's extremely engaged and actually they're doing even better than macro-influencers right now because their audience is very intimate but very specific.
So the content that you release, does that cater to both sections, or are you trying to appeal to more of a smaller section of society, or are you trying to appeal to as many people as possible?
No, I try to appeal to my audience. So it's not about small or big, it's about seeing them and knowing them and being myself. So it's balancing out between knowing who they are, but also who I am. Like showing myself for who I am. That's also important for what I stand for. But in a balance, it's like a dance. It's like a relationship.
Yeah, very. Oh wow. Okay.
You mentioned earlier that you had in the beginning very many interests, and then you took a break and finally decided to go for one direction. How was the process? How did you manage to decide for one specific thing in the beginning?
I think, I accumulated all of these experiences by doing, just, throwing myself into that. I actually even studied acting at the New York Film Academy. I did so many random things. And kind of got to know myself better by trying. It's just by trying and doing. And then it became kind of natural. After a while, you know what you like or what you don't like. It's tough to know what you like or what you don't like without doing it and trying it. But once you've tried it, you start knowing who you are. It's about knowing yourself. So the more you do, the more you accumulate this kind of capital in yourself. And that experience is your capital. And then you translate it into the decision will come to you.
You mentioned how sort of growing up, you were very observant of what people were wearing, for example, socks. I don't know if you grew up surrounded by brands, or if you were very wealthy or not. But how did you find that influenced you as you got to the level that you are now? And how did that change your perception of what branding is to you?
It did change massively, yes. First of all, no, I did not grow up wealthy at all, but yes, I did grow up next to wealthy people. I grew up in an area where there was a lot of wealthy people, and because it's a small town, so they all mixed together. And basically also branding because of Italy, Northern Italy. I'm Swiss Italian from Lugano, so Northern Italy influences a lot this part of brands everywhere. So we would always aspire to get those brands, to get those items. It was always a dream, you always dream about it, always think about it, always talk about it, people talk about it. Funnily enough, people wouldn't even date someone if they didn't dress well. Which is very funny, but it's true. It's like a thing, you know. You wouldn't say like they're hot, you say they dress well. The first date. But then, you know, working with these brands, at the beginning, of course, you're like, wow, I'm working with a brand I always wanted to have. But then you see how it works, you see the real value of things, you see how the brand is created, and some of them are amazing. There's a lot of storytelling, there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and others is just, you know, a price slapped on something that doesn't have that value. So now I recognize value much better than I used to, but like significantly better.
Which brands do you still prize?
Hmm?
Which brands do you still prize?
For example, I don't even know if you know it, I like Tod's. Any brand that actually puts, you know, effort into artisanal quality. And also how, you know, I would say even the corporate culture is. By working with them, you learn how the corporate culture within a company is, how they treat their employees, but it's not just how they treat them, it's just the spirit of a company and everything that goes into it. You learn it very quickly.
So now just pivoting, well, just one more question, more with your entrepreneurial ventures. Are you working on anything at the moment?
Yes, so apart from, you know, the usual content creation and reels and brand deals and the consultancy, I'm working for about, like, I'm gonna say it, but it's not really announced yet. It's gonna be basically a platform. I can't say the name, I can't say what it is, but it's for people like you who want to connect and, you know, high achievers, future entrepreneurs, cool people, and it will be free, and I wanna, you know, kind of like create this community, and I will announce it in the next maybe couple of months, I hope.
So a community of entrepreneurs.
Yes, that's the direction.
And how will that add to your brand, or will that be based on your brand? How are you gonna?
It's based on what all my experiences are. You know, it's not just about me; it's about the people as well.
Fascinating. So, yeah, I just got one question myself. Just pivoting away from entrepreneurship now. So, I'm just going to hold up this book, Empower Yourself. So, you've given 4 TED Talks, you can speak 6 languages, communication is kind of your thing. And what made you start the whole motivational talk scene?
Because, you know, online it's not very easy sometimes to grab attention for a longer period. The quality of the exchange is not as good as this. You know, it's fun, it could be entertaining, you could have shorter, you know, pills of content, and I don't have a YouTube that's developed, so I can't talk for hours on a camera. It's a completely different beast. So in-person talks came naturally, you know, also I've been called to do it. So one thing led to another, and from there, the book is also because I wanted to tell my story and my philosophy a little bit better about, you know, what I believe humans should do with themselves, be empowered, self-actualize.
Okay, we'll start here.
It's not that related, but do you believe in manifestation?
I do, 100%.
So you essentially said that you moved here for investment banking, right? London.
Initially, yes.
Yes, and coming from like a very multicultural background, what do you see, like, how do you see London developing? Do you see yourself staying here?
Okay, I personally, it's a very great question. I love London so much. I mean, say I love London, you know? I really love this city. I think it has a great pool of brains, actually. It's central geographically, so a lot of international people meet here. So I like access to events, to meetups, to opportunities, to culture. Anything you can imagine you can find in London. How is London developing? Not great. For entrepreneurs, not great at all. You know it, I know it. It's tough. It is tough, but it's still a great city. Will I stay? Probably. Do I I mean, I have a very good gut feeling about places. I fall in love with places and out of love, and I'm still in love with it, despite all of the, hurdles that we're facing in terms of, entrepreneurs. It's not going the best direction, but I have some faith, personally.
I have two questions. First question is, if you're managing your brand and you have a consultancy and you have this app coming up, do you have a method for managing time? And during your journey, did you have any moments where you were like almost giving up? And what was that motivation and that resilience? Where did that come from?
Well, when you're, an entrepreneur, you are basically depending on yourself. So it's all on you. That's the tricky part. A burnout is always, at the door. My struggle is always to learn how to relax. So how to switch off. That is the struggle I have. Managing time is not particularly difficult for me. I adapt to my own body needs, but I'm a bit weird, so don't look at me. I go to bed very late, I wake up very late, but I do everything late and it works because I need that. I'm an night owl basically. And then I learned how to, have the right people, select the right people with me that help me with the menial tasks, with the thing that I don't need to have so much control of. And AI is key. But yes, learning how to relax and how to switch off is like, no matter what you do, like you need to have that space that has nothing to do with the rest.
I have a kind of question that follows up. Basically, you started kind of as a brand yourself, like as a sole kind of person. But then, how did you learn to delegate, and what were like the hurdles there?
It's super hard for me, it was super hard to delegate. It is about selecting the right people. So, trial and error, honestly. Oftentimes, if you feel that that person is not getting it, don't waste your time. Just change. It's not personal, this is like work. If you don't have that chemistry, and if that person is not learning your ways, or if you have to micromanage everything, it's not worth it. Try many people, you will find someone who will amaze you, and then you'll be like, oh, you're better than me. Perfect.
So, you mentioned that London is bad for entrepreneurship, and I wanted to ask, why do you think that London is bad for entrepreneurs, and where do you think it's good for entrepreneurs?
It's just, I don't want to go political right now in the conversation, but it's not the direction. It's not basically, it's not fostering a space that can help us thrive better. That's all I want to say.
Okay, so where's good?
Where? I don't know, I'm still here, so here for now, but I'm mobile, I could, relocate. A lot of people are relocating. A lot of people I know that are entrepreneurs are relocating, but, London is English language. We're in Europe. Where else in Europe are you going to have an English language area for business?
Okay, we'll start at the top.
You said that you worked with Google. I was wondering if you could discuss a little bit more about how that came about and how that worked.
I didn't work for Google. I just worked with Google, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't remember. It's just one of many things. Basically, these campaigns come in, you negotiate them. You usually want a long-term relationship in which you can actually like the brand, you can actually work with them for a longer period of time for your brand. First of all, for your brand. Second of all, you want exclusivity with that brand usually, and you want to stand behind it. How these brands work, whether it's a technology brand or any other brand, is oftentimes it's product. So they have launches. They announce the launch to you. You decide the creativity of how you're going to communicate it to your platform and your audience. And say you have like 4 launches a year, and you decide how you're going to place that product within, your narrative. Your narrative and copywriting is yours, as well as content creation, most of the time. When it's not, it's usually a disaster. When a brand wants to micromanage, the campaign usually flops, because they don't understand that each creator has a specific type of audience and voice. Then there's events. Sometimes, I worked with like L'Oreal, we had often, red carpet events, like, I don't know, like the Cannes Festival or the Golden Globes or whatever, so you have to be present at those events and kind of soft use their products. Every brand is very different, every collaboration is different. For example, for Huawei, I presented on stage one of their phone launches in Berlin at their big technology fair where you present and you launch. It depends.
Do you have one particular brand story that you're really proud of, or one that worked out really well?
I don't know if I can say the brand, but it was a watch brand, and with my team, we went physically to their village where they created it and made a presentation about the numbers and the followers and what we can offer, and negotiated the whole brand deal, and then we had a great 3-year collaboration with this watch brand, but it was very big, and then I ended up working with like A-listers for it. It was great.
Okay, at the back in the grey top.
Thank you for your time. My question is about mistakes. So, were there any mistakes, if you could refer to those as such, that you would advise us to look out for so that maybe we will do the same? Obviously, this is different for each industry, but in your experience, what do you think we should look out for?
I mean, it's experience. Always have a contract. Do not work without contracts ever, no matter how you trust the people. It's not about trust or sympathies or anything like that. When you don't have a contract, expectations are mismanaged. Maybe there is some, unspoken things that you're thinking and I'm thinking, and we think we agree, but actually that's a disaster. A contract makes it clear. So always work with a contract. That's the biggest thing for me. I don't do anything without a contract, ever, apart from this.
Yeah, I mean. So again, now just building on that, I'll come back to you guys in a sec. Just building on the conversation, your mistakes. So it's going to move the conversation back to your mindset and sort of how did you empower yourself to just keep going? What was the mindset that got you through everything? How has that changed over the years? How have you adapted to like your own personal growth and the changes that are happening around you and external factors?
That's such a broad question. I don't know. I took responsibility on me from early on, I would say, and I don't really know how I empowered myself. I just learned. Well, read the book first. It's not like how I empowered myself. It talks a little bit about practical steps to take in your daily life to, first of all, shake off expectations of other people, of society, culture, parents, family, religion, anything, you name it. And then it's the best way to come back to your core and figure out who you really are, what you really want. And that's the only way that you will make the best decisions for your life, because otherwise you can go a direction that's not really yours, first and foremost. And second of all, I'm a woman in business, so there's a lot of even more of patriarchy is not amazing, and believe it or not, even in developed countries there is a lot of preconceptions, a lot, and I had to and I have to always push back to be respected.
Push back in what way?
Oftentimes, you could be treated just as a little girl, pretty face, or oh yeah, like you're a plus one. For example, I was a member of a place where I did meetings with my lawyers, my accountants, and I would always, invite them and pay for them, whatever. Like a meeting or whatever, just to have a meeting. And the people around us always treated me as their arm candy, which was really not pleasant. So it's just an example, but in business it happens a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. So Yes, anyone?
Sorry. A very important point you touched on there. I'd like you to tell me more about how you push back without being, excuse my French, push back without being called a bitch.
Oh, be called a bitch.
That's great. Not great to be called a bitch, and because I feel like sometimes relating to my own personal experiences within Imperial, a very like male-dominated university, I find that sometimes when you're a bit bitchy, you lose respect within, for example, let's say you're working within a team and things like that. And I'm just worried that sometimes then it becomes like an annoying voice in the background.
No. If they're calling you a bitch just because you're being assertive, that means they don't respect you already. You're not losing respect. They never respected you. Let them call you a bitch. You're not.
Yeah. And one more question. What has inspired you? Has anyone in particular inspired you? Is there any? I know you've written a book yourself. But are there any books that have inspired you? Or movies?
I recently read the Almanac of Navid Ravikant, and I like that word, mentality, very much in entrepreneurship.
Sorry, say that again?
What's it called? I don't have my phone here. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Loved it. Really, really great mentality in entrepreneurship. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you worked as an investment banker whilst also being a model, I assume? How did you, so a lot of us here sort of want to go into investment banking, and so it's very intense to get into. How did you manage the loneliness that comes with that? Because you have to spend a lot of time alone working, doing tests, and then flying away. I assume it was hard to manage relationships. How did you manage that?
Always. It was, I mean, it's part of life. A lot of phone calls, that's all. It is very lonely, and it was very lonely to move to London alone. So yeah, but you learn to create a community over time. Better to do it straight away. Don't wait like me, because I waited and realized that I should have consciously done it. So, you know, it's better that you kind of consciously invest some time into having companionship, friendships, people that, whether virtually or in person, you kind of see at a regular interval, because investing into great friendships, and now it's the best time for you because you're going to keep them for life.
You mentioned you were an introvert. How do you handle being an introvert while being in the public eye?
It's amazing because social media helps introverts massively. Thanks to social media, I can work, I can be creative, I can put out outwardly anything I do, but I'm protected.
Nice. You also mentioned that you have a hard time relaxing. You have a hard time relaxing.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you now consciously do in order to relax?
A lot of stuff. You need to have discipline in doing it. Meditation, couldn't have recommended more. Take warm baths. Dancing for me completely takes me out. Working out, also like just music. But it's very personal. Anything that takes you out of that state and the moment of, you know, not thinking, do that. Whatever makes you not think and it's healthy, do that.
Oh, grey hoodie. Yeah.
So, I just want to ask, when you start your entrepreneurial ventures, do you have a vision in mind, or are there specific moments in that journey that form like a clear vision?
So first of all, when I started an entrepreneurial journey or like business, I first have to like it, because I would have to spend a lot of time on it. So even if it's a good idea, but it's not something I like, I don't go that direction. At the same time, I'm balancing it out with, can it be successful in this market right now? Because, you know, you can like something, but it will never fly at the moment, so don't do that. So it's those two things usually that, they have to have the sweet spot.
Hi, so you just mentioned a couple questions ago being disciplined, which of course is really important in being successful. However, earlier in the talk you mentioned that you're not someone who does well with structure and you like that spontaneity, which is very similar to myself. I really hate like rigidness. But how do you balance being disciplined and enjoying like lack of structure? Like how do you cross that bridge?
So you can create your own discipline at this point. If you struggle with rigid structures that are imposed onto you, what you can do is develop habits that are convenient for you. So you consciously develop a habit, I don't know who that could be for you, and then you repeat it for a certain amount of time, usually 2 months, and then it becomes second nature. And you develop around your own personality those habits that you know are beneficial for you, but they are maybe a bit different from the normal societal structure, if you can.
There's a quote that I heard online, is that if the path ahead of you is clear, then it's probably someone else's. And as an entrepreneur, the path is meant to be blurry. But as an entrepreneur, you're on your own path, and it's difficult to find a blueprint because you're making your own one. Was there any point in your career as an entrepreneur where you found it difficult, and how did you tackle it?
All the time. I mean, but you have to go step by step. I don't know if language say that, but how do you eat an elephant? It's like this. So what you do is you create a plan, but then you tackle, the little pieces of the plan. You don't tackle the whole plan together. But then you need a plan together.
So, sorry, I'll come back to it. So just moving the conversation on from the motivational journey. You've given a talk at the United Nations, right? Could you give us a little bit more on that?
Human empowerment, it was the day of the woman, so human empowerment. It is all about how the internet empowers women. We were also supporting an app called She Trades that allows women to get trading partners all over the world. For me, the internet has really empowered me because it allowed me to not have top-down structures, even in media, in which some producer would decide whether I get or not a show. Thanks to the internet, I decided whether I'm online or not at any point. So yes, definitely, that's very liberating.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how did that opportunity arise?
They called me, they emailed me.
Oh, nice.
Yes, so thank you. You mentioned some time ago that you're training your team for your consulting agency so that they can tackle the problem the same way you would. I'm currently starting my own company where I'm making an environmentally sustainable textile for the fashion industry, which is why I asked about the fashion stuff. Can I please get some advice on how to hire the right people? Because pretty soon I have to start getting in people who are definitely smarter than me, way more experienced than I am, to help guide me along this journey. So how do I know someone is a great fit?
For which role though?
I don't even know what roles I'm going to have, but in general, just generic advice.
Well, generic advice is it depends on the industry, depends if you need them to speak great English or not. Let's start there. That's already your selection. Then it's, depending on what salary, price point you have. If you don't have a big pool of money to invest in talent, maybe try, lower income countries, because if they can work remotely, that's a really great hack. I would recommend.
I meant mostly personality-wise, because skill-wise and salary-wise, that's separate.
Okay.
But then once you have people with the skill set that you like for that specific role, how do you choose between them in terms of their personality, in terms of collaborative work?
Depends. Would it be in person or would it be remote?
In person.
Okay, so there you go. You need people who like to collaborate in person, discipline, and you need people who are actually very enthusiastic about your project. That's the main thing. The main thing is, are they in love with your company? Are they in love with your vision? And that the rest will be solved. But if they have the passion, they'll figure it out. They'll follow your lead. If they don't have the passion, even if they're geniuses, it's gonna be tough.
I was just wondering, kind of, especially like with personal branding and like content creation, where like your what you are selling is like so closely like tied with like who you are and your values. Like, how do you handle like maybe when like some of the more like lucrative opportunities don't align with your values? Like, how do you handle that? And like, do you think it's possible to like remain 100% authentic?
It is possible. In fact, oftentimes me being so outspoken about empowerment and the power of being a woman in business alienates some brands, because some brands want to see the traditional woman, which I'm not. But you know what? I am who I am, and you know it's better to lose a few opportunities and get the right ones.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, as a self-made person, did you have some mentors along the way, and in what shape, what kind of people they were?
Sadly not. I wish I did, actually. I really wish I did, but I didn't. I had to figure it out a bit, you know, by trial and error, and that was a bit of a mistake. I should have found mentors early on.
As a media personality, are you scared of being cancelled?
No. No, because I follow my feet because of all of my other experiences. I'll start something else. But you can always get cancelled. Now everybody in the public gets cancelled.
So as many of us, like we are young entrepreneurs starting our business, how do you convince someone to sponsor you or to invest in you when your company is so small? Like, what piece of advice would you start a big
What are your strengths? So think about your strengths and then focus on that. You know, at the beginning when you're just starting very small, it's about you and your energy and your vision. So make sure you really lean onto what you're great, your talent, and then you'll find somebody who believes in that.
Yes. You kind of say like, this is what
You have to, yeah.
You have to meet them in person or.
I think it depends on the industry, but oftentimes conferences are a good place to start.
Okay, well, I think it's time to wrap up now. Xenia, thank you.
Yeah, this guy kept the last one.
Oh wait, there's one more. Oh,
Yeah.
my bad.
Thank you.
Then we're out.
So this is on the question about creating a team, and also the gentleman asked about like how you should hire. My question is, how, when you're hiring, when you're training a team, you show them how you work and you make it efficient. How do you prevent them from stealing your ideas?
From what?
From stealing your ideas.
I sign NDAs in the contract, but they will always steal your ideas, no matter what. It's fine because it's about execution, not the idea.
And if they are smart enough, like I said, you know, like you mentioned that when you worked in the investment bank or in the establishment, like you talked to people who didn't know who like people next to them were doing. Like I was in a similar situation. But then if there are people like you who are not going to be stopped by that, you know, like once they figure out like the idea, it's not long before you'll figure out how to implement it. So except for NDAs, how else can you try to prevent that?
Be faster, be better. You can't prevent it. It doesn't matter because it's about your execution. Execution is worth more than any idea. Always.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Okay, so